everybody, we're Chelsea and Anna from Wax Wrap, and today we are going to show you how to make a beeswax wrap at home.
Chelsea's going to take you through the steps of the process, and I'm going to be filming. I'll get as close to the action as I can, so you'll be able to see exactly how we do it and make your own wraps successfully at home. Let's go.
Okay, so first I'm going to show you the main ingredients you need to make a wax wrap. To do this workshop, you're going to need a do-it-yourself block. We have these in our web shop. This is the, just the mixture of ingredients we use to make wax wraps. And one thing on these blocks, we have two sizes, small and the double size. As the name implies, this double size will make twice as many wraps as the small one. One thing I just want to point out to you is that in these blocks you might have these little brown flecks. These are just pieces of wood that were trapped in the tree resin, and once we melted it down it got into the mixture. We do filter the mixture as best we can, but some of the flecks are so small that they get through our filtering process. So don't be alarmed if you have these little flecks in your cloths, in your DIY block. They're not harmful. You can pick them out of your finished wrap at the end. Depending on the cloth you're using and the pattern, you might not even see them, and in that case, just leave them, but we'll show you that towards the end of the process. So I'm going to show you the 3 ingredients that go into these, just so you understand what you are putting into your beeswax wrap. And those are, first and foremost, beeswax. We use beeswax from 2 organic certified beekeepers here in Berlin. The next ingredient is tree resin. We use damer resin, and this is the ingredient that actually gives your beeswax wrap that tackiness and makes it stick to itself. And then the final ingredient is oil, and we use jojoba oil, and this is what makes your wrap nice and pliable, that it doesn't kind of break or chip when you bend it, that it doesn't get any lines in it when you bend it or fold it. It keeps it nice and pliable for a long time. So those are the 3 ingredients that are in one of these DIY blocks. Now I'm going to show you some of the other things you're going to need to make a beeswax wrap. You will definitely, for this process, need an oven, and you're going to need a baking tray and a piece of baking paper or parchment paper on top of it. You will need a clean glass jar. This is what you're going to melt your DIY block in. Best would be if you have a jar that has a lid, because when there's any extra mix left over at the end of this process, you can store it right in this jar and save it. You'll also need a scraper or a spatula or a paintbrush, or in the worst case, a spoon. Anything like that. It should be clean, and you're going to use this to spread around the mixture after you pour it onto your cloth. So either use something old that you don't mind if it gets waxy, or use something that's going to be easy to clean. A spatula like this is really good because you can get the mixture off quite easily because it's bendable. We often use a scraper, so whatever you have around, as long as it's clean, and you can use it to distribute the mixture over your cloth. You'll also need, very important, your cloth. We found that the best weight of cloth is approximately 135 grams per cubic meter. If that doesn't mean anything to you, think about the approximate weight of bed sheets or a regular button-up shirt. Anything like jeans or kitchen towels, that's going to be too thick. And if you make a wrap with that, it's going to be kind of cumbersome and not really so pliable. Anything like linen or really fine cloths won't absorb enough of the mixture, so your wrap won't really stick or work. So about 135 grams per cubic meter is good. If you have old bed sheets, or if you have an old shirt at home that you're not wearing anymore, those are great things to make beeswax wraps out of. You don't want anything that has anything else in it besides cotton, so you don't want any stretch materials, no polyester. It really needs to be 100% cotton. This is the cloth we're going to use. We'll get to that later. You're also going to need a pair of scissors to cut your cloth. Zigzag scissors are also really good for this, but if you don't have zigzag scissors like we don't today, just regular scissors are fine. You will need an iron to iron your cloth to get any wrinkles out so that your final product isn't wrinkly. There. You'll also need some, well, you don't need them, but I highly recommend them, some disposable gloves so you don't get the mixture on your hands, some toothpicks to pick out any of those little pieces of the wood that were stuck in the resin or any fibers that get trapped in the cloth at the end. And the last thing that I recommend is an apron, or wear some clothes that you don't mind if you might get a few drops of the mixture on. I'm gonna wear this old t-shirt, but if you'd like to wear an apron, I would recommend that just to keep your clothes safe. So those are the things you would need to make your beeswax wrap, and now we will finally get into actually making the thing. So just take your DIY block, put it in your jar, and then you're going to heat it up together with the oven, unlike baking where you preheat your oven and then put things in. In this case, you want to heat up the jar together with the oven just so that the heat doesn't run the risk that your jar might shatter. We're going to use a really low heat, so I don't think that would ever happen anyway, but just to be safe, pop it in there and then turn on your oven. So I'm going to put it in the oven at about 100 degrees Celsius. You can put it a little bit lower if you want. You could even put it a little bit higher if you want. It's not going to take very long for your block to melt, maybe 5 to 10 minutes. Keep an eye on it. And in the meantime, while it's melting, we can prepare our cloth. Okay, now we're going to prepare our cloth while our brick is melting in the oven. So I've got my cloth here, I've got my iron, and I've got a ruler to measure out the size of wrap I want to make. So first, I'm just going to iron my cloth. Okay, now that your cloth is ironed, you can cut it into the size you need. So our do-it-yourself bricks, the small one, which is the one I'm using, will make you about 1,000 square centimeters of beeswax wrap, which corresponds approximately to our L size, which is 35 centimeters by 35 centimeters. If you want, you can use the do-it-yourself block to make several smaller wraps. You can do anything really you want, any size you want, as long as it's about 1,000 square centimeters. So I'm just going to make our standard L size, which is 35 centimeters by 35 centimeters, and I'm going to use the ruler and my scissors to cut it out now. So this is going to become my beeswax wrap. So now we're going to check on how our do-it-yourself block is doing in the oven. It is about halfway melted, so I'm going to leave it in for a few more minutes, and in that time I'm going to prepare my cloth on the baking tray. So as I said earlier, you need a baking tray and a piece of parchment paper. This is going to protect your baking tray from getting the mixture on it, and it'll be a lot easier for cleanup. So you want to position your paper so that it's kind of going up the edges, so that if any of the mixture comes off of the cloth during the process, which it will, it doesn't go under the baking paper and get onto the tray. So I'm just going to move mine here a little bit and try to sort of crease it at the edges, maybe like that. So, and then I'm going to take my cloth, and as you can see, my cloth is too big to just put it on the tray as is. If you're making smaller wraps, it might fit. If you have a massive oven, it might also fit, but in this case, it doesn't, so I'm just going to fold it in half once. You can fold it in half again if you want, and make it like this. It'll still turn out just fine, but I find it works just fine if I fold it in half once and lay it on my tray. You don't want, so I wouldn't want to lay it on like this and have these edges of my wrap going up the sides of the tray. So I'm gonna lay it on the other way, and as you can see, it just fits without having the edges of my wrap going up the sides of the tray. Again, if this was too big, I would just fold it again and make it like this right in the middle of my tray. But I'm going to do it like this. So now our cloth is ready to go, and we're just waiting for our do-it-yourself brick to melt completely, and then we can get going with putting the mixture onto the cloth. Okay, so now our DIY block is completely melted, and before I take it out of the oven, I just want to let you know that this next part of the process needs to happen relatively quickly because the mixture will start to harden again at room temperature. So you want to take it straight out of the oven and immediately pour it onto your cloth, which you've got here ready, right next to you, nearby the oven. So don't let it cool down or anything. Just take it out and pour it on, and I'm going to walk you through the next step. I've got my gloves on at this point because it's going to get a little bit messier. I've got an oven mitt to get my block out of the oven, and we're going to do it now. So here's my DIY block, nice and melted, and I'm going to pour it straight onto my cloth. Now, if you're making smaller wraps, then don't pour the entire brick on there, but because I'm making a wrap that is the size that the brick can make, I'm pouring the entire mixture on. And now you're going to take your spatula or your paintbrush and you're going to start distributing the mixture over your cloth. You want to make sure the edges and the fold, if you have a folded piece of cloth, are covered as best you can. Don't worry if you don't manage to get the entire cloth covered at this point, because this is going to go right back in the oven and the mixture will distribute more there. But you just want to get it started by trying to cover your entire cloth. Again, get the corners, get the edges really good, and you can see that my mixture is starting to harden. It's no longer fully liquid, so I'm just going to smear that right back on, and yeah, this is the best I could do, which is totally fine. I tried to get the edges and corners as best I could, but you can see this one, I completely missed it. That's fine. I'm gonna put it right back in the oven now, and that's gonna redistribute the mixture, and then we'll check on it in about a minute or two and help it if it needs any more redistributing to make sure your entire cloth is covered. So put it right back in the oven and stay nearby now, because this isn't going to take very long. Maybe a minute or two, watch it, and once you can see the mixture kind of glistening, like it's melted again, like it's liquid again, then you can move on to the next step. Okay, so I'm down here on the floor now, next to the oven, and this is where the next step of the process is going to happen. So our wrap has been in there for a few minutes now, and I've been watching it, and now when I look at it, it appears to be wet, so my mixture has completely melted again, and I'm just going to pull it partway out of the oven and help distribute the mixture a little better. Again, the corners and the fold are very important, so you want to make sure that that's covered in the mixture. So I'm not going to pull it all the way out because I don't want it to harden again. I'm just going to slide it about halfway out of the oven and then use my spatula to distribute the mixture around. Really get it on the fold there. And make sure the edges are all covered. And as you can see here, there's extra mixture cooling out on the side. So that is mixture that I don't necessarily want to end up on my wrap because it's not necessary. Instead, I want to actually scrape it off to the side as best I can because we can save that mixture to make another wrap or re-wax this wrap later. So I'm just going to lightly go along the entire wrap here and press out any excess mixture. And as you can see, quite a bit is coming out, and as you can see, it's going back onto my wrap. That's fine, don't worry. We're going to do this again, but just start getting some of that excess mixture off of your wrap. And go along the fold as well as best you can because excess mixture tends to get trapped there. Yeah, as you can see, the excess just keeps going straight back onto my wrap, but I've gotten quite a bit of it off. So I'm going to push this back in the oven. Now we're just gonna leave it in there for about another minute because it's basically done. You can redo this part as many times as you need if you didn't pour enough mixture on at the very beginning, for example, and you notice, oh, there's actually no excess mixture. In fact, there's still parts of my wrap that are just blank, like don't have any mixture on it, then you can pour on a little bit more from the beginning. I've stood up for this next part because we're gonna take our tray out of the oven and put it up on our work surface. Before I do that, I just want to say that this next part also needs to go relatively quickly because as before, our mixture will try to harden at room temperature and we want that ultimately, but we don't want it to do that while it's still on the tray or else your wrap will harden to the piece of baking paper and then you need to put it back in the oven and let it melt again and then try again. So I'm gonna try to remove it from the tray quickly, but first scrape off any excess mixture that's on the wrap so we can save that and use it later. I'm gonna retrieve my tray now. So again, first I'm gonna quickly go back along my wrap, trying to get off any excess mixture. So I have a nice even coat, and as you can see, quite a lot of mixture has come off, so that's good. I can maybe even make another wrap with that. It keeps pooling back onto the wrap, but that's fine. One time along the fold to get that mixture off. And now I'm going to carefully pick up my wrap from the corners while it's still liquidy, so it comes off the tray nice and easy. And I'm just gonna hold it right here over the tray for a minute or two. You can kind of gently wave it back and forth. Some mixture might drop onto the tray, that's good. You definitely want to keep it over the tray at this point, don't walk around with it. It won't take long to dry. I can already feel that it's stiffening, so this really will only take a minute or two. And now it's pretty stiff. It's not totally stiff yet, but as you can see, it's no longer wet. I can touch it and my glove isn't getting mixture all over it. So this wrap is done. We're just gonna clean it up a little bit. So now our beeswax wrap is finished and you can use it right away. You don't need to wash it first. I'm gonna wrap up this piece of pumpkin we had laying around. So just wrap it up, hold your hand on it for a few seconds, and there we go. You've just made a beeswax wrap. Once your wrap is done and you've let your tray cool for a while, you'll notice that it's quite easy to lift off the excess wax that was on there. And this wax is great to keep for if you want to re-wax your wrap later on, or if you're about to make another wrap. If you're about to just make another wrap, I would say just leave it on there and put your wrap on there and then make it the way we made the first one, because that'll melt and then end up on your new wrap. But if you're not about to make another one, then keep these bits. You can also quite easily get it off the spatula or the scraper you just used. And yeah, keep these in the jar that you used earlier to melt your brick, and then you've got supplies ready to go to re-wax your wrap down the line. So that was our beeswax wrap making workshop. We hope you guys had a good and successful time. If you followed along with us and already made your wrap, we would love to see it. So post it on Instagram, send us a picture, whatever way you want. We'd love to see your product and we'd love to hear how you found it. Thanks again for filming the whole thing. That was great. And we wish you guys a lot of success and fun making your very own beeswax wraps at home. Bye.
Bye.